what most people are doing and calling networking is not networking, and it's not effective. They think it's just one more way to get your name out. Yeah, well, networking is part of my marketing strategy. Oh, well, sure. Networking is part of your marketing strategy. Building a network is not part of your marketing strategy. It is the opposite of marketing in every regard.
Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with confidence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target. I'm Mike O'Neill, and today we're tackling a topic that every leader can relate to: building meaningful relationships that create real business results. My guest, Daniel Andrews, is a master at helping leaders move beyond surface-level networking to cultivating intentional, high-value connections. In this episode, Daniel explains why traditional networking often misses the mark and shares a fresh approach to creating strategic relationships that truly matter. We'll break down practical steps to connect with the right people, foster trust, and build relationships that deliver measurable success. As an executive coach, I've seen how great leaders focus on relationships over transactions and how that focus drives meaningful growth. So let's dive into this valuable conversation about leadership, connection, and growth. Joining me today is Daniel Andrews. For over 28 years, Daniel has been dedicated to connecting like-minded, talented individuals. His mission: helping business leaders stop networking and start building genuine, mutually beneficial relationships. Through his innovative approach, Daniel empowers professionals to identify, meet, and nurture key referral partners, transforming traditional networking into a strategy that drives measurable business growth. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Mike. I'm glad we're able to connect on this.
We began talking about you being on this podcast literally months ago. That gives our listeners some idea of how popular you are. You help a lot of people do what we're going to be spending time on: how to stop networking and start building true networks, to say. Right. What is it about this that how did you get into this as a line of how you help clients?
Wow. That's a really good question. And as a franchise holder for Network in Action, right, my role is to bring people together, right? And I have been doing that locally for 8 years, kind of a Main Street model. And a couple of years ago, about 2.5, I started doing a digital community that's nationwide. So we meet via Zoom once a month. And in both cases, over the time period, really in the first few years of even meeting the local groups, I saw that people were surrounded by the right people, surrounded by people that were positioned to be able to give them multiple referrals and what I call a key referral partner. And they were getting some value from that, but they weren't getting the most value. And I started paying attention to what people were doing, what they were not doing, and at what stop, which train station they were getting off the journey. And I found that there are a couple of stops where a lot of people get off the journey, and I started figuring out, how to change that. And so, as part of the communities that I host, and then other people as well, I support people that are trying to figure out how to develop a few close relationships that will be consistent sources of referrals, rather than kind of a constant marketing by hand approach, right? What most people call networking isn't even networking. And from here on out, if I use the word network as a verb or the word networking, it gets air quotes, because what most people are doing and calling networking is not networking, and it's not effective. And they think it's just one more way to get your name out. Yeah, well, networking is part of my marketing strategy. Oh, well, sure. Networking is part of your marketing strategy. Building a network is not part of your marketing strategy. It is the opposite of marketing in every regard. And people just, the potential was right there and people weren't accessing it. And I figured out I needed to do something about it. And so I started showing them the roadmap, how to take the journey all the way to the end. So.
I maybe ask questions. You'll say, Mike, that's what people pay me to answer. So if I ask it, say, but what I would throw out to you is what I understood you to say is that you looked at a lot of how people approach this and you found patterns where people were maybe getting off track.
Yeah.
Is there a pattern to the pattern? Are there things that maybe people listening right now, if they hear you, they go, oh yeah, I do that. And I shouldn't be doing that.
Yes, which is to say, the two major departure points, right? I'm looking at your Appalachian Trail marker behind you there, so we can use that for our metaphor, right? Some people are through hikers, right? Mm-hmm. And some people are section hikers. Mm-hmm. And, the section hikers are the people that take some of the journey and then stop, which is fine if that's all you wanted. In the case of building a network, I presume people are doing it for some form of rev gen, meaning ultimately the point is to make sales and add to the client base, whatever business they're in. And so the two stops on the journey, the two trailheads where they exit, we'll stick with the Appalachian Trail metaphor here just because, why not? Are the first is they'll stop at awareness. Right. They will go out and they will hand a lot of business cards and shake a lot of hands. And, here's my card, Mike, call me if you need me. Better yet, here's 2 cards. And if you ever find somebody that needs me, have them call me. Mm-hmm. That's marketing by hand. You might as well have gone into the parking lot, right, and stuck a flyer under everybody's windshield wiper and gone home. That would have saved you time and money and calories. Right. Right. Digitally, you see it happen all the time. People come into the room, right, in a digital networking event and immediately start posting their information, sometimes more than once, into the chat box. They don't wait until they've been called on when people even care if they remember who's who, right? They just keep throwing, and my event's coming up and register for my class and here's my contact info and walls of text for contact info, right? I put one piece of contact info in and I usually DM it. I don't put it out for everybody. And that's my LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
Period. So they stop at awareness. Right? Because they're not actually trying to build a network. They're trying to meet prospects. So, speed prospecting, marketing by hand, first cousins, right? They're both very superficial.
Yes.
The other stop, the other waypoint, the other trailhead, there we go. We're going with the Appalachian Trail metaphor. The other trailhead people exit is they'll take the time to do some form of next actions. They'll go to lunch, they'll get into a call, they'll get on a Zoom call or whatever, go to coffee. And they'll briefly, usually ineffectively, try to persuade the other person that they are themselves referable and should have referrals sent to them. And even if they're successful in that, and most people are using a pattern or a series of questions and conversation that slow the process. But even if they're successful at that, you've now become referable in my eyes, right? And then they go, okay, well, Michael send me referrals when he gets them, right? There's a guy in my town that runs 2 very successful businesses. One, a mastermind. I'll leave the brand name out because this might come across as critical. The other, an entertainment business. Mm-hmm. Both of them are quite successful. I have a lot of respect for this guy. And I'll call him Billy Bob. That's my generic guy. I don't know any of you use his initials because somebody in my town might recognize it, but Billy Bob. Which is not to imply this guy's in any way, shape, or form redneck, by the way. He is sophisticated as professional as you are, Mike. But Billy Bob, he and I were talking. He said, what are you working on? This is several years ago. I said, I'm formulating the path, the journey people need to take to fix these things, to get more referrals. He goes, oh, I totally understand referrals are important. He said, I was just doing a spreadsheet last night of where my customers came from. Mm-hmm. And I said, of all the people I know, you're the most likely to utter the words. I was just doing a spreadsheet to know where my customers came from. Now, since then, I've met Bruce Kaufman, and Bruce Kaufman is now the most likely person. But Billy Bob was, at the moment, was the most likely person in my world to utter those words. And he chuckled because, again, you run a business, you want to measure results, right? That's not a bad thing to do. And I said, what's your high water mark? He said, one client gave me two. Now, I don't know if he meant two in the last year or two ever. That's a low number. She goes, no, wait. He said, you remember John Doe? And I said, yeah. He said, he closed his business, his mastermind business, and gave me his three best clients. So my high water mark is three. And I'm like, well, you realize that he's not going to every 5 years open a business, run it 5 years, and then give you three leads. And if he does, that's three every 10 years. That's terrible. Right. And he goes, yeah, that's not duplicatable. And I'm sitting here going, wow, his high water mark is three in an unduplicatable process, two in what could be a duplicatable process. Right. I'm like, for one person, I'm like, whoo, so they wait for the leads to come to them. And they don't get into a system of consistently meeting with their key referral partners and supporting them and being supported by them. And, it's worth 30 minutes of my time to share one lead a month with you. That's 12 a year from one person. That's a 20 to 30 minute Zoom call. 6 of those people means 72 a year. 10 of those people means 5 hours of my life. 10 half-hour Zooms, and 120 warm introductions to ideal client profiles per year. That's more than most businesses can handle, unless you're in a high transaction, low margin business, right?
What I've heard thus far, it's quality over quantity. What I'm also hearing is intentionality. And what I think I understand you to say is when you select a referral partner, it's not on the assumption, they might send me something. The assumption is you limit the list, you find ways to be mutually beneficial, and the assumption is that this is going to result not in one, not in two, but multiple referrals. Therefore, if you're going to invest in these relationships, that one person might make a number of quality referrals, and those referrals are not cold. They're warm introductions. And so I'm hearing, at least if there's a secret to your strategy, it is quality over quantity. But could I ask, when you are encouraging us be very selective who you have these relationships with, in terms of how do you qualify a quote referral? What does a referral mean to you?
Okay. People use the word lead, prospect, referral fairly indiscriminately, right? So it's worth clarifying, and I appreciate that. And I think most of us serve at least a breadth of client, right? Meaning most of us don't have one very narrow window for the sort of people we serve.
Yes.
It may be a very short description. If you're a roofing company, you serve homeowners and commercial building owners. You serve owners of properties, right? So it's a short description, but that's not inherently a narrow capacity, right? You probably restrict it geographically, right? Et cetera, et cetera. But I think when you've got your key referral partners, you coach them a lot at the beginning. You can taper that off dramatically the longer they understand you, which is another reason to focus on a few people, not a lot, because the quality of the referrals goes up the more they understand your business. Right. But I'm trying to figure out, okay. So in my mind, there's an ideal client profile. I used to use the phrase demographics, and my coach taught me the phrase ideal client profile. And then there's the trigger, right? And my coach, I used to say psychographic, right? Who are they? What's going on in their mind, right?
Yes.
Because no one's a prospect until they say they are, right? They may look like one, they may sound like one. If you get close enough, they may even smell like one, right? But until something happens in their world that makes them consciously go, I need more information there. Now, it may be the awareness that you can solve a problem that either they didn't think had a solution or they hadn't really pondered very deeply before. So it can happen in the moment, right? But there's got to be some notion that they might be served by what you have to offer, right? So there's got to be a trigger. And so when you describe an ideal client profile of somebody, right, they may spot those people, and then you can coach them on one or maybe two qualifying questions, right, to determine if they're in a mindset to be open to hearing about a solution for a problem, right? And I don't want my ideal client, I don't want my key referral partners to spend too much time grilling the other person, right? Because I might lose an opportunity to create some value, but I don't want them to be careless about, who they send my way, right?
Yes.
So I think one or two qualifying questions, right, to kind of home in on that. But the real value in the introduction is not another name. We do not need anybody else to get more names at our disposal. Our LinkedIns are full, right? $100 worth of SEO can get you a one-day spike in your category, right? You can go on Facebook and post, right? You can reply to everybody's comments on LinkedIn and hope that gets you, it's like waving a flag. You get some awareness, right? I'm not interested in access to more people. I only belong to 2 of the 6 chambers of commerce in my city. I'm not interested in access to more people. I'm interested in being introduced to the right people. And the reason why the introduction is important, it's not because I'm too lazy to go knock on the door myself. It's because the credibility that's transferred when someone makes the introduction. If Suzanne Taylor King said to you or me, you need to meet with Jason Croft for a minute, we would go, I don't know who he is, but okay, did you give him my calendar link or do I need to give it to him? Right. Okay. Might I ask, am I buying his thing? Is he buying my thing? Are we collaborating on something? But we're going to assume the meeting needs to be held. Right. Because we know that she knows us well enough to know what a good introduction looks like for us. So that's what I'm looking for. And when Jason gets on our calendar, whether he's buying or selling, he's inclined to believe us and we're inclined to believe him because we know Suzanne Taylor King doesn't introduce us to riffraff.
Well, for those who are listening, Suzanne Taylor King is someone that both Daniel and I know very well. Suzanne's my coach. And in the example you just gave, she did suggest you ought to talk to Jason. I did. I didn't necessarily, because she suggested it, I automatically reached out to Jason saying, in the back of my mind, if Suzanne says we should talk, then we should talk. Well, it might come to no surprise. Jason is now my podcast producer. He does high quality work, but it would not have taken place if I didn't have a relationship in place, whereas Suzanne had a clear idea of who I was, what I'm trying to do, and she made a recommendation that she felt could be a good match. Daniel, may I go back just for a moment? Because I asked a question earlier about contact information, and you said that you really only supply one thing, your LinkedIn profile. How important is that to people to have a LinkedIn profile that is spot on?
I would state it depends on your business, right? If you're in some form of direct sales or, you're a Mary Kay rep or, maybe Facebook is where you need to be, right? I don't know. For professionals, anybody doing B2B work, LinkedIn profile, I think is important. And when I say that's all I give, please be aware that that's all I offer when I'm in a networking event online, which I haven't been in months because the referrals are coming in at the rate I need them to. And you can get to my calendar from there, but you got to try, right? You got to get to my website, and my website can figure out how to get on my calendar, right? But I think a LinkedIn page that's at least current. I don't look at them closely. I scan them quickly, right? There's some people that are readers and they'll parse every line. There's even AI readers that will read a profile and tell you how to respond to this person, which I only put a little bit of stock in, primarily because I know plenty of people pay other people to write their profile. So it's not necessarily in their voice, right? So the AI could be tricking us because, right? And I'll put this out there, right? There's stuff on LinkedIn and I'm like, oh, that's really smart. I should like that. And then I'm like, oh, I wrote it. And by that, I mean, I wrote it. my social media person,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the only reason I've got posts going up on LinkedIn, and I'll be super, super vague on this, is the person that does it for me owes me a lot of money. And this is my chance to give them some integrity and some dignity in working off the money that they owe.
Gotcha.
Right. When the debt's paid, I won't be doing any more LinkedIn posts because so LinkedIn, given that it could be artificially generated, I don't put a lot of stock on what people put up there. I don't read it very closely. I'm interested in knowing what they're doing currently, what they did in the past, and I am interested in their recommendations. I spend time there because what? I'm looking for trust. Do people that I trust them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Who has said things about them? And how's it worded? Right. So I believe the recommendations are the most important part of that. But what you do, clearly stated, what you did in the past, and recommendations, I feel that's what I focus on. But I may be trying to achieve, something different than other people too.
Dan, one reason I was interested in having you on the podcast is because I have invited on the podcast. I've had experts. I've had LinkedIn experts. I've had social media experts, and I'm not diminishing those at all.
No.
What I'm hearing you say is you're not diminishing either. However, what you're counting on to be really the business development driver for you are selected, curated relationships.
That's absolutely a true statement. And I think, marketing, whatever that consists of, SEO, social media, post, podcast, whatever, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. The two things that building a network and marketing share in common, one is that they're related to business development. We're both pursuing each of those activities with the hope of putting more money in the funnel, right? More money in the bank account, I should say, not in the funnel, in the bank account. The only other characteristic they both share in common, and again, this does not imply that one is a subset of the other because they are unrelated to each other. But the other characteristic they have in common is that messaging is critical. That's it. Okay. But the difference is social media involves, or marketing in general, involves a very wide front end funnel, right? Where you're hoping to impact as many people as possible, get some of their attention, create some awareness, create some degree of possibly credibility or curiosity where they'll get into a conversation with you. Some of them will come on board, right? And then you have your ideal client, right? The problem is the numbers. You've got to reach a certain number of people to get a certain people to engage with you, to get a lot of less than ideal clients to engage with you, to get ideal clients to engage with you. Building a network has the opposite effect, right? I'm interviewing them to see if they're worthy to be my client. And I don't say that in any sort of, I'm just so good at this. But I've got more people coming into my world that meet my ideal client profile than I can serve. So then my question becomes, I get to choose, I get to be picky about who's coming on board, right? The filtering's already been done through other people's relationships in that regard. And I got a conversation with somebody one time, and this is a short podcast, so I'll give you the short version of it. But he said something about, I'm proud of the fact that I have 18,000 connections on LinkedIn. And I said, I'm proud of the fact that I have 1,800 people that would actually return my phone call. And he looked through the screen and he said, yeah, there's a difference in there. I said, yeah, there's a really big difference, right? Mm-hmm. The only number that matters is revenue. That's the only thing, that's the objective of running a business, right? As Sajad says, if you don't have a business that pays your bills, it's not a business, it's a hobby, yes. Right? If your business isn't paying your bills, it's not a business, it's a hobby. Okay. Revenue. The only two numbers that make up that number, the only other two numbers worth measuring are how many people are giving me money and how many people are referring people to give me money. Because you're going to have 10 followers and 9 of them referring you, and that's great. You can have 100 followers and 1 of them referring you. The 100 means nothing. How many people are giving you money? How many people are referring people to give you money? That's it. Those are the only two numbers that go into money. And so, in my opinion, everything else is an ego metric or you're using the broadcast approach where you're hoping enough people that are your ideal client will filter into your system, which to me is a very passive. I'm not saying it doesn't take work and energy, but it's a passive. You're waiting for the right person to show up in your world rather than counting on your referral partners to make the right people show up in your world. Right? If I never made another outbound phone call to somebody that I didn't know, and I only worked off introductions, which is really where I'm at, my calendar would be, if I gave more room on my calendar, I would have more people than I can serve if I made more room for on my calendar. If you get introduced to me by somebody I trust, Suzanne Taylor King, Mike O'Neill, today, it's probably going to be January before you can meet with me. Now, that's partly due to the weirdness of December, but it's usually 2.5 to 3 weeks out.
And for those who are listening, we're recording this in early December. Matter of fact, we booked this. Earliest I could get this on your calendar was about 6 to 8 weeks out.
It was. It really was.
I want to come back to something you said a few minutes ago, and you mentioned the word transparency. Let me be transparent with you and to our listeners. I serve on a board called the International Business Council. It's part of a chamber in my area, and I'm the immediate past president.
Okay.
We hosted an event this week, and it was kind of a holiday-themed event. So it was kind of loosely structured. But what do you do at these things? You go around and say hello to folks. But I was listening to how did people introduce me to others? And
yes.
I was a little bit sobered, I don't mind telling you, by the contrast of how I was introduced. It told me that I need to do a better job of making sure they know who I am and how I help. One was a CEO who introduced me, and I think I literally blushed by what he said. He didn't go down the list of Mike does this, 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 and this. He basically described his take on me. And I was very flattered by that. But what he also knew is based on observations of me, he says, here are the kinds of things that Mike solves. He didn't have to go down the list of leadership development, executive coaching, HR consulting. He just says, these are the problems that Mike solves, and I have a high regard for Mike. And then he could walk away, and I have a conversation with someone who is already leaning into the conversation based on that introduction.
And there's several lessons tied up in that. And one is your only opening message should be the types of problems you solve. Until I want a solution to my problem, the way in which you solve it is irrelevant to me, meaning I'm not a prospect yet. There are plenty of people for whom I am a prospect. I have plenty of people for whom I am a client. I still don't know how they do the magic they do. I pay them a check, so I don't have to understand that stuff. Right. So now the disconnect occurs because we, as providers of some product, service, goods, whatever, have a healthy part of our ego caught up in the experience of working with us, right? Daniel Andrews' is coach, and I'm not the only one that coaches this stuff, by the way, I've met several people, is different than your experience with Christine Dean or this guy I met yesterday, Jason, somebody or other, right? Working with Mike O'Neill or Jason Croft is different than working with other people that do what they do. So we have a healthy ego caught up in the experience of, working with us, right? We've thought about our processes. Our processes may be unique. They may just be the personality we put into it, but they're very well thought out. We have an input, a process, and an output, and we're happy about our process. We're enthusiastic about it, as we should be. When you're talking to a prospect, met a gal that runs a day spa, and she's, backed me into a corner and talking, for 5 or 6 minutes about, hair removal and laser and, wrinkle reducing and, the experience of being in a spa. And I'm like, do I need a mirror? Am I a prospect? Because I'm not a prospect until I tell you I am, number one. Right. I said, do I look, sound, smell like a prospect? Number one. I said, my second is, or do you expect me to remember all this and parrot it to somebody else? No. Right. All I need to know is she's good at her job. And when I'm in the men's room washing my hands, the guy next to me looks in the mirror, pats his face, dry, and goes, hey, you need to go talk to Susie Q. Right. I've got an introduction for you. Right. That's it. The specifics of her program mean nothing to me. Right. That's not how I'm going to identify a prospect for her. Right. By going, hey, by the way, did you know if it's Susie Q's spot, she can do this and this and this and this is, and the process looks like this and this and this and this and this. And dude, you really need to get those wrinkles fixed. Are you kidding me? That's not how that conversation is going to go. Right. So letting other people introduce you tells you what message they have about you, which, by the way, can be, as you said, sobering. If they're way off track, by the way, whose fault is that? Comes back to you.
I know that this is what you do for a living. This is how you help your clients. You help them understand this at a deeper level. In this time together here, I know we can't go to that level of depth, but what I am picking up on is if people can say to others, not so much what you do, but the problems you solve, and they can do that in a compelling fashion, that's golden.
Clear, concise, and compelling, because those are the only reasons someone will repeat your message. If it's clear, concise, and compelling.
Yes. And you just repeated it twice for punctuation as a reminder to us. What is it we need to be doing out there?
My coach has to keep reminding me to bring it back to the basics. I coach this, and yet I have to be, because our healthy egos are caught up in how cool it is to work with us.
Yes. Daniel, you've worked with a lot of folks over your career. Can you think of an example where either you or a client got stuck? And when that happened, what did it take to get unstuck?
I can use a clear example because I like to think I fixed it in a matter of seconds, right? Maybe I didn't, but I also like this example because it comes up a lot. A lot. People will say to me, I like helping, right? If somebody comes to me and needs a resource, an introduction, a prospect, a key referral partner, I don't mind making that introduction. But it's really awkward for me to ask someone else to support me. And I say, Ray, and he may be local, but he's fine with me using this example. He and I are actually very close. And I know there's a lot of Rays in my town, so I'm not too worried. But anyway, if somebody figures out, it's not a big deal. Ray said that to me. And I said, Ray, let's forget about asking for a minute. Let's focus on how good it feels when you give. He said, you like that part? He goes, yeah. I said, how does it feel? He goes, it feels good. I said, oh, come on, it feels better than that. Give me an example. So he brought up something, and I did the Tony Robbins thing where I made it up close, vivid color, and loud, right? I helped him image, right? So his body physiology is processing this, right? He's almost in the same sort of dopamine hit, borderline euphoria from when this happened. And I said, feels pretty good, doesn't it? And Ray's like, yeah. I said, why would you rob other people of the chance to feel that way? When you don't ask for what you need, you're robbing them of the chance to feel good. And he's like, dang. So when people say that to me, I tell that story, I make that point. I said, if I can fix it in 5 minutes, a minute and a half, great. If not, let me refer you to Monica Basanoff, because if you need more help than that, she'll fix it for you, right? But if you can accept the short version, this will solve a lot of your problems. And it's because people feel good, but it's also because of their healthy egos. At an event, Josh is looking for work. Mike is in a position. And I only knew Mike. I went to this event because of Mike. I flew from here to Salt Lake City for golf because he said it'd be worth being there. And I trust Mike. So I'm there. And Josh keeps thanking Mike, thanks for this introduction. Thanks for this resource, right? Josh is between roles. He's not, some dude begging for a job. He's a professional like you and I, but he's looking for a role. And Mike's like, no problem. And Josh's like, if there's anything I can do. And Josh's like, I don't, Mike's like, I don't keep score, man. Anything I can do. I just love to help my friends, blah, 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 blah. And I was at breakfast the next day with Mike. I said, Mike, kind of, permission to speak freely? He said, yeah. From you? He said, you can say anything because, the trust level is high with you. And I said, Josh was telling you it feels uneven. Josh was telling you. I said, if you keep it up, it's going to start to feel condescending to him. No, Josh, you can't do anything for me. I'm in service to the world and just, I said, you either need to think of something he can do for you. I wouldn't suggest having him come mow your lawn because he doesn't live in the same city, but that could be it, right? I would suggest kind of something small that he can do, but making out like it's a big thing. lying about the size of the, balance in the scales, or find something he can do for someone else, but make out like it's favored you. Hey, Josh, I don't need anything from you, but my buddy Mike O'Neill really needs introduction to somebody in X field, right? Would you get into a quick Zoom with Mike and see if you can help me? That would be a huge favor to me if you could help Mike O'Neill out. And Josh would be like, yeah, I'll do that. Right? Give away the favor, transfer the favor, but let Josh feel like he's valuable in your world, because otherwise it's condescending. Overgiving will kill the relationship as surely, not as quickly, but as surely as overtaking. And people miss that. But I see a lot of people get stuck on the fact that they love to serve, but they're not willing to ask to be served.
Very insightful. Daniel, as we wrap up, could you leave us with one final thought, maybe an actionable takeaway or a piece of advice that leaders can apply to their leadership or business building journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing where people miss the boat early on is they're not strategic about who they build their relationships with. If you're a real estate agent in my city and you convince me that you're referable as a real estate agent, I may have 1 or 2 leads a year for you, because most people I know aren't looking to buy or sell property in this moment, number one. And number two, most of the people that are already know a good real estate agent, right? Somebody they trust, right? Okay. But if you convinced a mortgage lender or a funeral home director or a nursing home director or a moving company or a divorce attorney, they come in contact with 1 or 2 a day.
Yeah.
Right. And so why invest the time with me when you can only meet with so many people in a day, week, month, or year? Why not invest it with somebody that's strategic, right? The moving company and the divorce attorney are key referral partners. The salary negotiation coach, John Gates, and the resume writing coach, Amanda Valbear, are key referral partners. Amanda's never going to hire John. John's never going to hire Amanda. But John's prospects and clients need to be introduced to Amanda, and Amanda's prospects and clients need to be introduced to John. Find the person that's selling to your market, but they're not selling what you're selling. I call them a parallel salesperson, right? If you're a bookkeeper, it's the payroll company and the tax attorney, right? If you're the IT guy, it's the merchant services and the office furniture. If you're the office furniture, it's the commercial real estate agent. If you're the financial planner, it's the divorce attorney, right? Find the person that's positioned to consistently give referrals, and take the time to uncover your referability, but also to discover their referability, because you're looking for a mutual partnership. I don't like the word reciprocity. I don't like the word matching. I teach mutuality. At any moment, it might be a little out of balance, but over time, it's going to balance out. So find the people that you can be mutual with and build those relationships instead of this randomness.
What a gem. I love that last thing you just shared. Before we close, Daniel, I want to leave our listeners with this question. And that is, why do people choose to follow your lead? Is it out of obligation or because they believe in your vision? Empowerment starts with clarity, confidence, and resilience. As an executive coach, I help leaders build these strengths to inspire their teams and drive meaningful results. At Bench Builders, our mission is to transform good leaders into great ones through practical strategies that deliver lasting impact. So if you're ready to elevate your leadership, visit bench-builders.com to learn how we can help. Daniel, thank you again for your valuable insights. For listeners who want to connect with you or learn more about your work, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Easiest place is to go to my website. And let me point out that you can't Google my name because it matches an Australian parliamentarian who's quite bombastic and has filled all the Google search returns for his name. So you actually have to go to my URL. You cannot search for Daniel Patrick Andrews, but you can go to www.danielpatrickandrews.com and you can find me there. And that's got links to my calendar, links to my LinkedIn profile, links to accumulation of my testimonials, right, about the work that I do. But that's a good place to start if somebody wants to find it. DanielPatrickAndrews.com. If those of you are driving down the road and just want to make a phone call or text, I don't mind putting my phone number out there, 361-6825. I think phones are personal. And text first, right? And just say, Mike O'Neill Show, got a question. And I'll pick up the phone or call you back.
Well, we will also include that and your phone number in the show notes. I do want to thank also our subscribers for tuning in. And I hope that today's conversation sparked some fresh ideas and inspiration to help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.